Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Dennis Giannoutzis. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutzis.
Yeah, I guess the quickest 1 minute version of it would be I did a bunch of marketing gigs here and there, high school and college. And then about a year and a half before I was going to graduate, I started Electric. And then over the past, I'd say 3.5, 4 years, have just been scaling that company, which is a Shopify Plus agency. So we were able to grow it to about 45 team members, primarily specializing in retention marketing. So email and SMS marketing, but also website design and development. Really focused on achieving the highest certifications within the industry, like Klaviyo Elite, Tented Pioneer Partner, and so on. And that led to our acquisition earlier this year in April by a beverage technology company called drinks.com. So the agency is still running and we're still working with all of our existing clients and bringing on some new ones in the alcohol industry. But a lot of my day-to-day is now focused on the beverage technology side of things and our app with Shopify, enabling wineries and retailers to be able to ship direct consumer across the United States.
Nice, very good. And Electric, of course, was a leading e-commerce agency, a marketing agency, and it sounds like a very exciting time. Now, what made you think about wanting to start Electric?
At the time, it really was just me making some money so that I could go out and do things in school. And I knew long-term that I wanted to start my own business. I was more so interested in entrepreneurship than I was necessarily marketing. It's not like I had this undying passion for starting a marketing agency. It was more about, I want to start my own business. What are some of the areas that I could potentially do that in? And it's aligned because starting your own marketing agency is very low cost, especially in the early days. It's just you and you're selling your services. So hit an inflection point around probably 3 months before graduation time where it was like, is this something that can support me and the team or is it not? Because if it's not, then I need to accept real job offers that I had. And if it is, then we're just going to go for it here. So I fell into it a little bit in that sense, but I knew I always wanted to do things entrepreneurial. And luckily, because of this, now I will be able to continue to pursue that.
Yeah, great. And one of the reasons I got you onto the show is that the fact that you're a Gen Z entrepreneur, and love to hear from your perspective around from a Gen Z sort of age group, generation.
Mm-hmm.
Love to hear from you about leadership and that as we go through today's questions as well in our dialogue. Now, before we get underway, sport. Do you follow any sport?
All the major, say, US sports, I'm a follower of. There's ones that I like more than others.
Yeah.
But I'm always checking Bleacher Report every day and getting in my ESPN here and there. So I gravitate more towards basketball than anything because that's what I played, but football, baseball, hockey, even started to get into UFC a lot more. I just enjoy anything that has to do with competition and anything like physical.
Yeah, good. And basketball, who's your favorite team?
I'm a little bit broken on that one because I moved to Miami. So now I'm going to go to the Heat games and I guess I'm supposed to be a Heat fan, but I grew up watching the Lakers, but I don't really like them being my favorite team because they're everybody's favorite team. It feels, I don't really know. I'm going to go with, I'd say I don't have one, but I definitely, when the playoffs are happening, I'll pick a team and then I'll root for them and go with them. But I'm more of a enjoyment of the sport and not necessarily super devoted to one team.
Nice. We just got news yesterday here in New Zealand because Steven Adams, I don't know if you know that player, but he's massive. He's just re-signed another contract with his team, another $45 million contract. It's pretty awesome and exciting for him. It might be $45 million New Zealand dollars, maybe. Yeah.
I think there's some interesting fact about him. He's not the only New Zealand professional basketball player, but from wherever he's from, he's the only one or something like that. There's some interesting tidbit about him that I
He comes from a sporting family. His sister was Olympic champion, gold medalist in shot put, which was really amazing, Valerie Adams. His other sister, and there's several kids, and another sister in the Paralympics just won a medal as well, the latest Paralympics, and that's so pretty cool. Alrighty, let's get into the questions here a little bit more. How did you get into leadership?
I just fell into it because entrepreneurship naturally leads you there. It's almost a prerequisite if you're going to be an entrepreneur that at some point you're going to need to have a leadership position and role, unless maybe you bring on a different CEO, they're going to operate as that and you focus more like internally on the product or something. But I mean, at some point you're going to be a leader of other people if you are in entrepreneurship.
Yep. Now, you said you fell into it that way. But were you in any other kind of leadership roles, university, college, things like that?
No, so I really did not like the organizations or the clubs, not because there was anything wrong with them necessarily. It just wasn't real. That was always what tied me up about some of these organizations, is that you were in university and you were not in the real, like in the real world actually doing it. And so I spend more of my time focusing on the business than I did necessarily trying to take on leadership roles in school organizations or things like that.
And did you do any to upskill yourself in the leadership side of things? Did you do reading? Did you do courses? Did you get a mentor, coach around you? How did you help yourself around that space?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of mentors who helped me along the way and even made me realize to begin with that I had this desire in me to explore the entrepreneurship path. And then started reading a bit as well, fell off reading, but actually have reinvigorated myself to start reading like a book a week now, which I've been doing for about a month and a half. And it's been really insightful. And I don't like to read anything I like to have things to take away. So going through, taking actual notes that I can then think about, how can I implement this in my day-to-day life, or how can I test this out at work to see if it could potentially be beneficial to me or the company or my team members. So I think mentorship is really important, and also just a desire to learn, because I went through everything I learned from actual tactical initiatives to more higher level like leadership stuff. A lot of it comes from just Google. If you have a question, the answers are out there. And you, especially on the actual deliverable side of things with a marketing agency, you haven't done it until you've done it. There were a lot of things that were sold in the early days that it's not like I had 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience doing that, but all the information was out there to be able to make me an expert in whatever it was that we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have those kind of things out there like Google and other things, YouTube, your videos, people sharing kind of information that we can go to and learn from. I just say to people, just be careful, making sure it's quality information that you're going to get, right? Otherwise, let
your sources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some really interesting people out there. And so, yeah, just make sure you do vet the source that you're getting and the resources that you're getting from, and the information that you're getting as well.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
I am from sunny Singapore. Have you been here?
Yeah, I used to go there about 4 or 5, 6 times a year in my global role, and actually looked at moving to Singapore at one stage. Wonderful place, great people. And if you haven't been there, listeners, I highly recommend going to Singapore. It's a wonderful place. Yeah, and the people there are beautiful, and the food and the shopping is just great. So it's a great hub for around Asia Pacific, definitely. Now, Vivek, I've already given an introduction to the audience a little bit about you, but is there anything else you want to share with you, with us about your background?
Sure. So I am a millennial specialist and a speaker. What I do is I talk to organizations about how they can recruit, reward, and retain the younger generation in the workplace. I believe that leadership is changing, and the way we lead with the younger generation has to also change in order to really keep them longer, not keep them forever, but keep them longer than we are keeping them today. And that is only possible if we let go of leadership that's rooted in the past and embrace newer ways of leading. So what I do with organizations is I speak to engage with the employees. I do some consultation work with them around how they can come up with new strategies to really boost that employee engagement across all generations, including the younger generations as well.
Fascinating. And I think you've written 2 books, and I'm going to get to those in a minute. But you just said something there before about keeping them longer, but maybe not for forever, because I agree. I don't think they stay there for much longer. But what is one or two things you think leaders should be thinking about when they're hiring millennials, when they're bringing millennials on board? How do they actually retain them?
Yeah. So leaders should be really thinking about how can I serve them as a leader? I think that is one of the key things that maybe was not the key definition of leadership back then. It used to be a very command and control. How do I command and control my team members to get things done? And leadership, essentially, it's about how do you move people to get things done effectively, right? Without having to really be the one doing it yourself. You get people to do it for you. And that's where I believe that if you want to really get millennials moving as fast as possible to the highest potential, then you've got to start asking, what can I be doing differently with this group so that they feel motivated and inspired to go above and beyond. The problem I notice, or the challenge, is that a lot of leaders cannot connect with the mindsets that the younger generation have, the behaviors that they display, and it also is a confirmation bias of the stereotype that we do see in the media. The media, of course, paints a very extreme picture. Either they are very good or they're very bad. And you will fall into either camps based on your personal experiences. But I think it is the role of the leader to be the first to adapt if they want to see the change. And that's where I talk about all of these things to organizations. It's the leader's responsibility to effect change. So they are to be the ones to change themselves first. And that's why leadership is changing is such a key theme, I think, for all leaders today.
Okay, so leaders need to change first and adapt to be able to connect with the mindset of the actual millennial. So how do they connect? What can they do to connect with the mindset of a millennial?
The first thing is to have this mindset of experimentation, because the young people, they come in with a lot of energy, they come in with a lot of ideas, they come in with new ways of doing things. They love innovation, they love to try different things. And the moment someone says, hey, maybe let's keep that idea aside, or instead of saying, I don't think you really thought this through, right? Having open experimental mindset to say, hey, I'm actually open to exploring that. Let's try it out. Let's see what we can get out of it. It may fail, but at least they don't get knocked down. They don't feel like their voices are not listened to, right? The young people, they feel like when they have a leader who's listening to them, they want to contribute more. But what we are seeing today is a lot of leaders don't want to take up the risk of failure, and we are not embracing failure as a part of success. So what we do is, okay, maybe you stay here for a few years before you tell me how to do my job, right? So that's the kind of feedback that they get. And then what then happens is they stop contributing. They go into what we call quiet quitting. Okay, you're not gonna take in my ideas, and I'm just gonna do what's basic and what's necessary. I know I'm still going to get paid anyway. There's no point for me to go over, above, and beyond because my leader isn't listening to me and I don't feel heard and I don't feel like contributing. So we actually need leaders to really have that open mindset to listen and have that dialogue. And instead of just saying no, maybe even explain why. And that way, at least, they can build a relationship. The original way of don't do it, cancel, no go, it doesn't build a relationship. It in fact makes them question, why didn't my leader hear me out? Why wasn't my ideas taken into consideration? Why do I need to wait 5 years to contribute an idea? So all of these things are, I believe, a lack of experimental mindset.
Yeah, I think by saying all those kind of no's, and it's just like they're putting roadblocks up in front of them. And then if they don't like the roadblocks, they want to go off and do something else for sure. And I love what you just shared there about embrace failure as part of the success or part of success. I think that is, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think that's so important. So important for the millennial, for them working for a boss or a leader, but also for the leader to understand that as well, and that we learn from mistakes. And I think that's important. And I see that you've written 2 books. One's called Engaging Millennials, 7 Fundamentals to Recruit, Reward, and Retain the Largest Generation in the Workforce. I think that is so important. The second one is Empowering Millennials, the 5-step sequence to design a life of fun, freedom, and fortune. I see what you've done there. You've done the R's in the first book, and you've done the F's in the second book. I see what you've done there. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I like what you say there about the recruit, reward, and retain, that multi-generational workforce? Because I think it's really important. That's one is to attract them, but then it's also to retain them, as we're saying, which is really important. And the other one piece you said is about the reward. What do we mean by the reward?
The kind of rewards, the benefits we see in organizations have always been a one size fits all, right? You get your insurance, you get your dental, right? You get your very basic stuff. But do you know that there are so many organizations, especially these startups, that are offering a lot more benefits that are very appealing to the younger generation because they have more options. So instead of a one size fits all, because these benefits, I think they became a lot more popular as the baby boomers entered the workforce, right? On top of its salary, I'm also going to give you this and this. But we never really innovated in that space. So how can we do that? How can we give more benefits that are varied? So a 20-year-old or 21-year-old won't be so interested in insurance as opposed to someone who's probably closer to retirement in their 50s, late 50s, right? And 60s. But we don't offer something for the 20-year-old. So in Alibaba, actually, they have this benefit of if you're single, we actually do matchmaking for all the singles within the organization. It is one way to keep our family stronger together. So the committee, of course, gets these names of the singles, put them on a board, and they do some matching. And if they actually marry, that's also been rumored that Jack Ma has also attended some of these weddings before, because it is one of those things in their culture, right? And that's very relevant for someone who's single in their 20s, 30s, or maybe even their 40s, right? But that is something unique. We've had other organizations that bring in health coaches into the workplace where they say, you guys are sitting on the computer all day long. So we're going to change that up a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you attend these exercise sessions. That's super easy. They come to the office, you have a workout, you get a shower, and then you get back to work. It's not always an 8 to 5, sit down and work productively. It is actually very different. We've even had some startup CEOs give up the challenge for people to say that if you actually hit certain health goals, you get an extra salary, unlimited leave, so many different ways to engage with the younger generation by offering different benefits that will really excite and bring out the best in them.
Wow, that is so cool. Wished I had that when I was a graduate and a young guy. You know, first of all, I think it's helping remove a lot of the barriers, a lot of the objections or the excuses, right? So one is the matchmaking is one thing, but also bringing in the health coaches, getting them to exercise. It's getting rid of those excuses. Oh, I'm too busy. I've got a deadline and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, it's really good to see. All righty. That's very good. Vivek, next question for you here is, how did you get into leadership?
My whole entrance into leadership happened when I was 18 years old. I was enrolled into the national service in Singapore. We have to serve 2 years in the army, and I went through the basic military training. And that's where I discovered that I would really enjoy working with more people and leading them. And they gave us these missions. So that started my leadership streak. I got selected into the leadership school from there on, and then I was posted back into the basic military training school as an instructor. So that actually started my journey. And from there, I started realizing the important role of leaders. How do you motivate them? How do you engage with them? How do you make them feel listened to? And also that was when I actually found the kind of leader that I also aspire to be.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.